Hey everybody, it's Joe, and as you know, I'm in the middle of the low poly dino Kickstarter, and I am having a riot modeling stegosauruses and raptors and all sorts of cool dinosaurs for this Kickstarter. Absolutely loving it, and I want to take just a second to talk to you guys about how to model low poly. So for this, of course, I'm going to use Blender because that is my weapon of choice, but the techniques that I'm going to talk about here are not exclusive to Blender, and you might learn something just by watching them. Now, there are multiple ways that you can model low poly. You don't always just have to control every single point and vertice. You can use some modifiers to take a high poly model down to low poly. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sphere to the scene, but I've made it a very high poly sphere. Look over here, 200 segments, 100 rings. This thing is smooth like a baby. Now I'm going to go in edit mode, move everything up in the Z, turn on some proportional editing right here. Boop, proportional editing. Find that point at the top and pull it up. Make sure I get my, there we go. And what have I done here? I've made a high poly egg. Very smooth, very beautiful. You print this, it will be like beautiful. But we want low poly. So what I'm going to do right here is turn on the Decimate Modifier. Now the Decimate Modifier, there's a couple of different ways we can decimate. I'm using Collapse. You don't have to use Blender to use the Decimate Modifier. I think that Mesh Mixer has a Decimate as well. But we can turn down the ratio of it. And if we, oh, they wants me to type it in. I'm going to drag just a little bit. We're going to go do. And you can see, let me zoom in on the egg a little bit. As we drag this down, you'll see this get more facety and more facety and more jaggy and more low poly. Now if I take it down too far, it reduces it down to just a polygon. We don't want that. We want at least some in here. And I do like to type it in. So 0.01. Yeah, that was okay. I think we can go smaller. 0.005. That's, I don't know, I think we can go smaller. 0.001. That's too small. That's too small. Let's back it up just a little bit. 0.002. That's good. How about 0.003? Yeah, I like that one. That's a nice low poly egg. And that is how I made the low poly egg in the video where I was talking about the eggs, and then I got attacked by a dinosaur at the end. That if you would like to see that video card, boom, there you go. You can hit that card and watch that when this video is done. But again, this is not the only technique that we need. Let's scale this up a little bit. There we go. There's a proper egg-sized egg, low poly, beautiful. Let's pull up another scene here, or another layer, and let me show you another technique. Now this is the first technique where you're kind of controlling every aspect of it. So I just brought in a plane, and planes are great because if you look at them in edit mode, they're just 4 points, 4 lines, and 1 face. I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees. Now the way that I normally do this is I will delete one of these vertices. That way it leaves these vertices here, and then I can start extruding and building the shape the way that I want it. However, it's hard to see that on the recording screen, so I'm going to do it a little bit different this time. I just want you to know that that's an option. Instead, I'm going to extrude out this face, and then extrude it out again, and then I'm going to grab the individual vertices, and I'm going to shape this to be the shape of what I want. Now, what am I going to model here today? I don't know. Maybe I'll do a dinosaur head. I've been doing a lot of those lately, so why not? And there's a basic dinosaur head shape, but it's flat. It's not three-dimensional, so what we're going to do, we're going to grab it all, extrude it out, scale it down just a little bit, and then we start adding depth and dimension and making it shape the way that we want. For instance, I'm going to take these 4 points. I'm going to move them out in the Y. Maybe I'll move this one in the Y. Maybe I'll take these guys right here and add a bevel to them, and take this point right here and merge it over here. That way we get a nice forehead shape. Let's use the knife tool and cut an eye into this thing, you know, like that, and then extrude it out. There we go. There we've got the eye like that. Now this is only half the head, so I'm going to add a mirror modifier to it. Mirror it in the Z, in the Y. Haha, I got it in the end. Now the problem with this is that the inside face of this thing is polygon, so I'm going to delete those faces so that it becomes one solid shell. And I can just keep going like this and keep fiddling. Oh, that doesn't look, you know, I don't know which way that is. It going to fold this way or is it going to fold that way? So I will triangulate those points and control that. And that's basically how I'm doing a lot of the low poly that I'm doing. Now there is another option. And that is, let's move the head over here. Start with a basic shape. I like a cylinder, but let's decrease it down. Now, for some models, I do 8 on my base shape. For some models, I do 6. For some models, I do 5. I might do 5 if I want to have like a flat belly on it, or I might do 7 if I want to do a flat belly on it. And it's kind of, there's no rule to what I'm doing. For the Spinosaurus, its body is a cylinder that started with 7 facets, but for the Raptor, its body is a cylinder that started with 5 facets, and both of them get the flat belly because of it. But the Spinosaurus has a bit more detail, and the Raptor has less, but the Raptor makes up for it with feathers. I really couldn't tell you how I decide which one gets. I just think, well, what's going to work in this one? So we'll take it, rotate it 90 degrees, scale it in all but its own Z. That way, here, I'll do that again from this angle. There we go. Oh, hey, I don't like the angle that's at. Let's go into edit mode and rotate everything by 90 degrees. Make sure that that back ridge is up. And then what I do is I start, you know, rotating, selecting, extruding, scaling down, making the general shape that I want. And again, I'm controlling all the facets this way. I could do anything from here. I can grab, you know, whole loops, or I could grab individual vertices and give it a bit more of a back shape like this if I wanted to. I could grab the bottom vertices and bring them up and make its belly just even a little bit more flat. Scale them into Y. Make it more flat. I will still frequently create a floor object. Let me grab the floor object from over here. My default scene has a big cube in it that is below the Y line. So I'm gonna add this to my scene over here. This cube is 110 by 110, which is about the build plate of a Monoprice Select mini printer, which I think is a great one to do, to model to. That way I can be looking at this and go, oh, okay, well that's too small, obviously, I need to scale it up. But that way also, when I'm done modeling, when I've got everything the way that I want to, but I want to make sure that the bottom is completely flat, so maybe I'll bring this tail up just a little bit and that tail up, but I want to make sure that the bottom is completely flat and that all my booleans, that I didn't accidentally stick something below the build plate. I will simply grab the floor, grab my object, use the bool tool plugin, and difference them, and boom, perfectly flat bottom. Exactly the way that I want it. Everything looks perfect. So that is the other technique for modeling in low poly. Now, regardless of which technique you use to model with, modeling in low poly, particularly where you start with a few facets and control every facet of it, is actually a great way to start modeling. That allows you to block out your shape and then use smoothing algorithms to make it higher poly, and then use sculpting to add details and things like that. So knowing how to model low poly, knowing the techniques that you saw me just playing around with here, can be a starting point for modeling, but it can also be an ending point. Low poly is itself an aesthetic, and so you can stop at the low poly and go with that. And whether you are using low poly as a base or using it as its own aesthetic, the tools are the same. I hope that this has helped somebody. I hope that this has helped you learn a little bit and help you make something cool in the future. As always, I want to thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon backers, who your support is more needed than ever. And a super big thanks to my Kickstarter backers. This Kickstarter is going great, and I really appreciate the support. If you can't support, tell a friend about the Kickstarter. Let them know, hey, this dude's making really cool dinosaurs for 3D printers, and they're really neat. Go check them out. But I'm loving it. I'm having a good time, so go check it out. And as always, safety first. See you next time.